what will these data lakes and data oceans lead us to when they're all pooled together? And so for that, we have our final sort of fireside chat here. We've got Ryan Green, who's the founder and CEO of Gridwise. We've got Venkat Srinivasan, who's Director of Product Management at Last Mile Delivery at Walmart. So they know about data. And their moderator, Natalie Lung, who's a technology reporter at Bloomberg. Natalie, the floor is yours. Round of applause, please.
Okay, thank you for being here for our last session. We're here to talk about how data, real-time data, is being used to inform on-demand delivery and autonomous fleets. And so we have here today two people in the gig economy industry who can talk a bit more about that. And why don't we kick off with some quick introductions with start of Ryan.
Of course, happy to. So I'm Ryan Green. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Gridwise. What is Gridwise? Think of us at our core as an analytics company that's really focused on using analytics on the gig economy to empower the gig workers to help them make more money, but we also use it to empower businesses and cities to improve their operations and inform a lot of their investment decisions as well. So how do we do this is we have a mobile app for the gig economy worker. It's the leading business app in the US. It's empowering hundreds of thousands of gig workers to help them maximize their earnings by providing them insights on what's happening in the market that shows that helps them understand when and where they should be working, who they should be working for, but we're also helping them track everything about their gig work in one app. So everything, all their trips, all their earnings, their taxes, finances, everything happens in one place, and we give them all these offers in our marketplace to help them earn more, drive safer, or keep more money. And as we have hundreds of thousands of these gig workers using our application today, we're capturing very rich, I would say rich and comprehensive data on what's happening in the gig economy. Really is just like understanding not only how people are working across different platforms, but also how people and goods are moving, what's happening in rideshare, what's happening on delivery. We see users tracking their earnings in Gridwise across 175 different gig economy companies in the US today. So we're able to kind of anonymize and package that data up to provide industry insights on a lot of these trends to different businesses in the retail space, investors, a lot of mobility operators, and as well as cities to help inform a lot of infrastructure investment as well.
And Venkat, what do you do at Walmart?
First of all, thanks for everyone for being in the session, and thanks to Ryan and Natalie for helping me run this. I know Ryan and I are the ones keeping you from the happy hours, but I'll make sure this session is worth your time.
We have an hour, right? It's like an hour of time.
I'm Venkat. I'm a director of product for last mile delivery at Walmart. So when you open up the Walmart app and you order groceries or some general merchandise, when it reaches your doorstep, that's what my team does, and we help you make sure that you get the orders when you want it, how you want it, and as promised by Walmart. Underlying all of this is the Spark delivery platform. That's one of the things that we look at. Data is very important. I don't have to say I'm one of those gig delivery companies that Ryan's drivers look at, but we constantly look at what our customers are asking us, how can we deliver it to them in a particular way, the way they want it, at the time they want it, in a convenient fashion. So I think it runs up and down the value chain for us.
I want to continue with Walmart and ask you a bit how delivery demand has really changed since coming out of the pandemic. People really relied on delivery of groceries during the pandemic, and now that we're kind of out of that time, how has the mix of pickup orders picked up, and how has that changed so far since Spark started?
Oh yeah, seems like an eternity ago, but it was very not too long ago. I would say COVID or the pandemic was an inflection point for Walmart and for most gig delivery companies. We were getting demand that we almost could not fulfill, and from there to now we've constantly grown in our customers, our drivers, and the value propositions and some of the things that we give our customers. So we've grown phenomenally from that point. I think last year it was also part of the earnings report where we said now we can reach 93% of the households in US through same-day delivery, right? So that's what Spark enables, and that took a lot of meticulous planning to make sure that we maintain the high standards that we expect from our drivers, and our customers are extremely happy. It's not we just go about extending the households we cover. So it's grown phenomenally well, and it keeps posing new challenges. As you scale, it's a good problem to have, but we keep getting at how can we make it better for our customers? How do we make it stickier for our drivers and make sure it's worth their time that they're investing in Spark?
Can I ask which are the market types that you see are growing fastest?
Oh, yeah, sure. We've taken a very cautious approach to make sure that we've gone to a lot of markets. We've expanded existing markets. We make sure, like, stores are like the center of the universe for us. So we expand along with our stores, but we have to keep in mind that the food safety standards, like we have to deliver groceries and like, let's say, milk and eggs before they expire. So that's one thing we keep in mind. It's a mix of both rural and urban markets, but I think some markets have grown better than others. For example, you cannot grow at the same speed in like heavy metros, heavy traffic. You can't expand it out too long. Whereas where like you can deliver within the food safety standard regulations, we've expanded in like low traffic, better demand zones.
And for Ryan, like, how have you seen the different types of goods that are being delivered that have broadened out, from groceries and to other things?
Yeah, so I think to add what you were saying, Venkat, is like our view is going to be a little bit more expanded into what we see as like restaurants as well. And I think everyone here kind of understood the wave that took place during the pandemic. And I think there was a lot of headlines, years after around like maybe a correction in delivery volumes. But what we can see is that there's continued growth across all categories that we look at, which are restaurants, grocery, and retail. Restaurant, I would say, is one of the more mature areas of growth and is most established. I mean, it was happening before we even had apps to order. We were using Grubhub to call orders on the phone and order as well. But I would say that what we've seen in we produced this gig mobility report that's reflective of kind of the growth of last year in 2024. We've seen restaurant continue to grow. We've seen grocery continue to grow as more established categories. What's very interesting to see is the growth in retail. And I think as you look at a lot of the third-party delivery platforms out there, is like they see retail as kind of the next green pasture, the next horizon for growth. So retail being like a Best Buy or a Bed Bath & Beyond or other stores alike. We saw that retail grew about 30% year over year just in 2024. You have legacy players like a Macy's. This was really surprising to us, is that you saw them grow, I think, about 4,500% at scale. So we're not talking about the law of small numbers here, through their what they did to reinvest in their kind of logistics with DoorDash Drive as well. So there's been a huge wave of growth in retail.
Just to add on to that, I think we're seeing the same kind of trend, like non-grocery general merchandise that are growing a lot. And I think it's through the flywheel of we now can reach 93% of households, and you can start seeing them for like a much faster delivery. So that kind of kicks off like, oh, I can order this as well, so let me do it. So we see a lot of growth in general merchandise. And one thing that I didn't kind of call out earlier was, as we expand, I think there's a lot of focus on accessibility. Like we've grown up to like all 50 states where we accept like SNAP and EBT for our customers. Rural customers. So there's a lot of focus on making sure that we just don't expand in a particular area. It has to be more inclusive and for our not so fortunate customers.
Yeah, like could you expand a little bit on just how the shift in consumer and driver behavior patterns are sort of based on like macro factors like inflation and just fuel prices in the past few years?
Sure. Yeah, it hasn't been a last easy couple of years, right? So with inflation, what Walmart's tried to do is kind of absorb some of the cost and make sure that the prices don't rise. And I mean, there's only so much they can do. And what we've seen at that is we've actually had like a phenomenal amount of growth in our customer orders. And that creates the need for more drivers that we have to get on the platform, do active deliveries. So our stores and drivers have worked really hard to make sure that we are able to fulfill the demand, and they are at the backbone of our growth.
And so just a perfect segue to talk about your driver efficiency. You talked a bit about, there are now explosion of apps and every driver is kind of multi-apping. Like, what are the platforms kind of doing to attract, get drivers to pick up the orders and to incentivize them so you can ensure a good pickup time?
Yeah, that's a good problem to have. And so we know our drivers multi-app, right? So, and we actually encourage them, not officially, but we know that. So our best effort is to make sure we're able to fulfill our customer orders, and we have the right amount of supply and the drivers are able to take it. One of the key things we've seen is respecting the driver's time and making sure that we are planning a trip correctly, asking them to come to our stores at the right time, and keeping the dwell time really low. Those kind of things add a lot of value, and especially in markets where we've started doing that very well, drivers love those trips and they tend to take it more. And also they've come to terms with some kind of pattern that works for them. So they want to, let's say they want to drive between 12 in the noon to 4. So they choose their hours, and I think we've gotten better with like making sure that their unproductive time or what they think I'm just wasting here keeps going down.
What about for the broader platforms? Like, what are some observations there?
Yeah, so I would say we work with a lot of companies in the industry to help them. I think first off, like baseline, what does efficiency look like, and what are the factors that are impacting it? How does it change by time of day, when there's events, when there's weather, inclement weather, things of that sort? And then even drilling down into, like as you talked about protecting the driver's time and thinking about efficiency at the pickup, is like you're kind of relying on some of the merchants to make specific types of investments as well. Luckily, you guys can kind of just do it full stack. But if I'm a Grubhub partnered with a restaurant, I need to be able to understand that that's like, or like that restaurant needs to invest in maybe standardized parking, or make sure that they have like the right kind of alerts and systems and workflows set up that bring the order out on time and that they minimize the dwell time. Because then, you'll see across a lot of restaurants in the country where someone may go to, surprising, like a McDonald's that's like a fast food restaurant, may take the longest period of time to bring the food to the driver. But then even as you revert over to the last 100 meters, there's a lot of challenges that are existing there for drivers today, which is also impacting the consumer experience. And so you think about, you go in an urban area, parking, where do I park at? And so standardizing parking is becoming very critical. How do I enter this building? Inserting those instructions in the delivery instructions of like the keypad and things of that sort. And so I think you're seeing as more and more players are entering into the market, retailers, you see restaurants, you see grocery chains, as they're entering it, they're realizing it's like, hey, for us to ensure a good consumer experience, we need to have a good driver experience, and we need to pick the right partners to work with as well. And then as everyone works together and makes those investments across the board, then you have a good experience for everybody.
Actually, Ryan had some very good points, right? Like if you think of efficiency, I think it all comes down to how do we best use the drivers. So if you start from a driver's entire journey, it starts from how do I plan my trips? How do I batch the orders together? How do I make sure that we are creating a proposition that works for us, the customer, and the driver? So making sure that the trip planning and the routing are really efficient makes the best use of time. And how do they spend the lowest amount of unproductive time? I think Ryan even touched on the last 100 feet problem, which is if you don't have the right, let's say in an apartment, a gate code instruction, or how do I get into it, or if all apartments look the same, how do we make it easy for drivers so that even if they've navigated 99% of the distance and they can't get to the customer, that impacts the customer, the driver and us. And so how do we take on the complexity on behalf of the driver, work with the customer to make sure that they have the right access? So I think if you look through the driver journey, there are multiple areas that you can optimize and get better efficiency.
What are some of the ways you collect that feedback and detect those inefficiencies? Like mapping issues or address?
That's a great question. So, and I know I'll keep it short.
Start how where the data comes in and how it flows through every step of the pipeline.
No. So that's an interesting problem that we touched on a couple of years back, where what we call failures is that the driver was there but wasn't, like the customer says they didn't get it, right? So what we figured is there is a feedback loop that we can actually work with. There's a driver feedback loop that we have, like where they say, hey, I couldn't get in, or I can't find the address, it's like an empty barren land or something like that. Or when we see this happen a few times, we reach out to the customer for their next order and say, hey, looks like there might have been a problem. Is everything fine? Do you want to add the gate code? So these are things that you can see on the Walmart experience today, and pretty public ones. What we do is we collect feedback on both sides and try to make sure that we fill in the blanks for the customer and the driver.
I can add to that is like I wouldn't say that we're as focused on collecting the feedback on like how was your delivery experience, but I would say that what we do is we see it from more of a quantitative approach and just being able to measure what is like the pickup efficiency and the drop-off efficiency look like at every single pickup and drop-off. And so what we look at and help a lot of others in the industry look at is, okay, when someone requests or accepts an order to go pick it up from a restaurant, from a retailer, et cetera, how long does it take? What is that average time that it takes? And then once they get there is like, what is that average dwell time? And how does that change across different merchants and different categories? You see like alcohol and what was the other category is auto body shops or others like that, or auto repair parts is like, they have the fastest dwell times. We see the average dwell time is like 3 minutes for a driver, but it's because of the type of inventory and the infrastructure of where they're picking up from. On the pickup side, or like the drop-off, we actually see that that's where you'll see just the most amount of chaos going around. If you visualize this, you can just see someone just trying to go around, enter a building, get tired, and then like maybe just stop and the order just gets dropped off outside somewhere for the consumer. And so like we're actually able to kind of see that journey on the pickup and the drop-off, and then help figure out how do we help make this more efficient and create a better experience for our users as drivers and for consumers as well.
I want to switch gears and talk a bit about autonomous delivery. There's a lot of excitement and demos today. And for Walmart, like how are you seeing autonomy play into this whole workflow? And what are some of the experiments that you've been doing?
So I'm not entirely the right person to answer that, but I can tell you about there are different order profiles that work well for Spark network, for the drones network. I know recently it was public that we finished 100,000 deliveries on drones, right? Like, so there's a particular order profile that really gels well with drones. And I think we've been experimenting in that space. Beyond that, I don't have a lot of information, but to me, it always looks like when you start with autonomous like drones, I think you start unlocking a new order profile that was earlier not there, right? So it is always additive in nature. It's not like, for all of us, I don't know if anyone has ordered on drones here, you know that you can't get everything you can get through a Spark delivery driver. So there are some limitations. So it just acts as additive orders for us.
And for Gridwise, like what's the opportunities there you're seeing with, sharing and, partnering up with other firms to help develop their autonomous solutions? Well,
I would say is like what we see is like we're like a lot of people I think that the autonomous vehicles are coming to market and actually being like, hey, they're Waymo's out entering markets and it's taking all the drivers' jobs right now. And I think I've talked to a few people here today and they're just like, oh, so like as they're earning, like are the trips for drivers going down right now? It's like, no, it's actually not changing at all right now. I think that like the way we view it and the trends that we see in talking to others in the market is that we see like a pretty mixed hybrid market for the next 10 to 15 years. even though we see that these companies are expanding pretty aggressively, especially on the rideshare side, the way that we measure that and the way that we help companies like understand what is the impact to of autonomous vehicle companies rolling out right now is we're looking at kind of a normalized index of trips per driver over time, which we see, we look at, okay, when did Waymo enter a market? When did Cruise enter when they were still operating? And we can see like, okay, how is that trending? Is it changing much at all? Like, no, actually it's not. What about trips per hour per driver, which is more of a measure of liquidity of the marketplace? We can see that trips per hour per driver, which is like, what is the throughput for each driver? How many trips do they have at their disposal to complete in an hour? That's been declining since like well into 2023 in like markets like California. If you look at San Diego, you look at San Francisco, look at LA, is before Waymo even entered the markets, that has been on a decline. Why? Is because the markets are oversupplied right now from a driver standpoint. And so we see that, as cost of living and the cost of living has increased, we've seen more and more people flock to gig work. And because of that, the available work for everybody in the market has declined. And so I think that there's, as we look at this from an autonomous standpoint, is like there's a lot of different use cases over the horizon that a human is just going to be better suited to solve for. But I think the mix of the two types of drivers is going to, if anything, I think expand the market and expand the opportunity for both humans and autonomous vehicles.
There's one thing that I can talk about is customer acquisition is a hard problem, right? Like for Waymo to acquire just as many customers as Uber or be that comfortable, that trust level, it takes a lot of time. But like you said, I think at the end of the day, it's going to be an additive force there.
And the other thing about autonomous is it's very hyper-local. You need to have a very good understanding of your market. And wanted to stick with that and sort of, can you share a use case of where mobility data directly influence your incentive and sort of pricing strategy in the hyper-local sense?
Not so much pricing, but like Walmart, Walmart in itself is very hyper-local. You have a lot of stores. Our last mile delivery is based out of stores. So we can look at how we plan trips in areas where there's very high traffic. Our goal is to make sure that the driver is set up for success and delivers for the customer, right? So there are different ways, a number of items, how long the trip is. We make sure that we use historical and some dynamic data that we get, like in terms of weather and traffic, to make sure that we use a very hyper-local strategy to create trips and execute trips that helps our drivers meet the customer's demand and promise and make sure that they're well engaged and they're happy with the trip.
Ryan, are there examples of how drivers experience different economics across metros and what autonomous vehicles companies can really learn from that?
To say what? I'm sorry.
How are there real examples you can share how differently drivers experience the pricing economics in different cities and how autonomous vehicles can learn from that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to learn about kind of pricing today and what that looks like in the market and how it's trending. I mean, to summarize this, as we see prices have continued to rise over the past few years, 2024 we saw a 17% increase in pricing on rideshare services like Uber and Lyft. When you look at pricing, if you're an autonomous vehicle operator, if you're another type of operator, it's important to be able to baseline what the kind of today's market looks like, but what I was talking about earlier, all these factors like time of day, weather, day of week, different cities impact how pricing works. And so I think in the report that we had partnered with S&P Global on is we spoke about how mass adoption of autonomous vehicles or just growth of the market is going to come from the price being able to get down to $1 per mile. Where are we at today? The average is about $2.84 nationwide per mile on rideshare. And what you see is in cities, there's different cities like Seattle where that actually goes up to about $5.50 and in the afternoon of the day. So you'll see throughout different times of the day that price per mile is going to vary. And so I think like what you have to do as a mobility operator is get down to the like very granular understanding of like each region of the city, start to zone it out and understand at different points of time of the day and based off of where people are coming from and going to, is like how does pricing change, and then how does that inform like what willingness to pay is and what your pricing model may need to be.
To wrap up, like I'd love to get your thoughts on, what should people take away, as platforms and retailers and cities become more integrated. Like what should they think about in terms of preparing for the next few years?
Sticking with the theme of data and on-demand delivery, I would say 3 to 5 years is my personal opinion that today we use a lot of it to optimize and for optimization, internal optimization purpose, right? But as we look forward in the kind of data that's available and partnership with cities, for example, we can come up with new customer propositions that are totally driven by data we didn't know that existed. Through some of the unsupervised learning that we do, there might be new customer propositions that might start becoming available that we were never aware of. So that's what I am most looking forward to, and I think there's a good possibility.
Ryan?
Yeah, I would say in terms of what we have to, where you're saying what we have to look forward to, or
yeah. What should people keep in mind, as these entities like platforms and retailers become more and more integrated?
Yeah, I mean, I think over the next few years, like what we need to solve for is like I think what's required over the next few years is a major amount of investment in infrastructure that is impacting how people or goods are moving from point A to point B. And so I think that a lot of this is going to come back to like, yes, someone like Walmart Spark can do a lot of different things to influence efficiencies of the pickup and drop off, but a lot of it also requires cities to standardize pickup and drop off areas and use different types of data sources to inform, hey, how do we create a better operating zone for delivery drivers to come in and actually pick up from different parts of the city based off of where delivery demand is happening? How do we, if autonomous vehicles are operating in the city, how do we create areas where they're staging in particular areas and not inducing congestion, or rideshare vehicles as they're waiting for someone out on the street, which has been happening for years, inducing congestion because they're just kind of sitting out in the middle, they don't have the right place to park. And so I think there's quite a catch-up that the infrastructure has to play as a lot of the private sector stakeholders continue to make investments, whether that's at the merchant level or at the gig platform level, as you guys are doing now.
I think that's all the time we have, but it's a pleasure to speak with you too, and thank you for having us.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Round of applause.